Yeah, this episode, do I change the name of the show? This week I'm going to talk about marketing in the Hedera ecosystem, some really cool things that happen at Karate Combat, and a bunch of other news and everything like that. I mean, why I titled the show this is like last week we talked about the news. Let me just head over to Hashgraph.com. Last week we were talking about Swirlds Labs rebranding to Hashgraph. And for those unfamiliar, Swirlds Labs is the company, the dev shop, the organization tasked with developing the Hedera network, maintaining, for example, nodes for certain governing council members, all sorts of different important work. Swirlds Labs is not Swirlds, though. Swirlds is a separate company that owns the patent to the Hashgraph algorithm that's, was handed over to Hedera. And Swirlds is what's on the governing council. So Swirlds Labs, not on the governing council. Swirlds on the governing council. Swirlds Labs, no longer called Swirlds. It's called Hashgraph now. And I was talking last week about Swirlds Labs, about Hashgraph, about the big change. And I do think, my thoughts last week were, hey, fresh branding, fresh logo. We've been talking about the need for better marketing in the ecosystem. Objectively, I would say, from what I've seen, Hashgraph is a better brand for Swirlds Labs. I think that, Swirlds doesn't, shared worlds, cool. But I mean, from an ecosystem perspective, it's not very descriptive of what they do and kind of where they're focused. So all's to say, step in the right direction, I would say. But the issue is, and this kind of came to my mind and kind of talking with people in and out of the ecosystem. And the reality here is the word Hashgraph is, I think, a really, really, really important word. And I'll give you an example. And then after we'll get to some ecosystem updates. But Hashgraph is an important word because it's what we use to describe the technology. It's what we use to describe an affiliation to the network. And of course we have the word HBAR, but sometimes it's played out, sometimes it gives the wrong impression, whatever it is. So for me, we look at the name, the name of the show, Hashgraph Enthusiasts. And this question of, do I change the name of the show? The reason I didn't call the show Hedera Enthusiasts, or something like that, was I didn't want to associate the show with a company or an entity or an organization, right? And I also didn't want to call the show, HBAR Enthusiasts, because, this show is a little more about, it's a little meta, right? It's a little more about, deep tracks, alpha, getting out into the weeds a little bit. It's not very like surface level. So I'm not talking about the coin a lot. I'm not talking about price action. I'm not probably doing a lot of things I should be doing to get more viewers, but it's not HBAR Enthusiasts. So when I started the show years and years ago, back in, feels like forever ago, back on episode 1, I decided to call it Hashgraph Enthusiasts because, it's about the technology, and also knowing that Hedera isn't going to be the only Hashgraph. As we know, there's going to be other, shared worlds or other private or semi-private or whatever DLTs based on Hashgraph that may operate independently or connect to the mainnet or all these different types of things. So I never wanted it to be about Hedera. I never wanted it to be about an organization. And so I called it Hashgraph Enthusiasts, right? It's just an enthusiast of the technology, enthusiast of the Hashgraph technology. And I like that energy because it allows me a lot of times to kind of like pull back from, I think sometimes what we can get lost in a little bit, like the hype cycles of crypto, this coin versus that coin, all these different types of things. And sometimes it allows me to kind of get a little higher level, get back to the technology, talk about some of those things, have certain people on. And also it kind of removes certain affiliations and everything like that. I mean, the show is supported by viewers that, you know, send HBAR to a wallet. And, you know, I think that that's the way to go. Also, Bones, shout out. Good morning. Appreciate you tuning in. And so now it's kind of weird because Hashgraph is now a company. And I think that people were joking with me and they were like, you know, hey, is this, you know, Swirlds Labs enthusiasts or Swirlds enthusiasts or Swirlds enthusiasts or whatever. And I was like, oh, it felt weird. It felt like a word was taken out of the lexicon. When I go to a conference and people are kind of like, hey, you know, what's the difference between, you know, blockchain and this thing? You know, you can always say like, well, you know, there's blockchain and then there's Hashgraph, and Hashgraph is a this or that. And now Hashgraph also means a company. And, you know, I think that there are challenges with that. I mean, like I said, it's good rebrand, I think better than Swirlds Labs, but I do think that there's some thinking that needs to be done as well about how it affects other projects as well, like the Hashgraph DAO working group, the Hashgraph NFT working group, the Hashgraph DeFi Alliance. There's all of these organizations and groups and community initiatives and like stuff like my show that purposefully used the word Hashgraph because it doesn't affiliate you with any organization or any kind of like entity, right? I don't want to be affiliated with, not to say I don't love what Swirlds Labs is doing. I talk to those folks all the time. I think they're fantastic, but it just is like, I don't want to be affiliated with a company. You know, I like the freedom of the show. I like it being about the tech. I like all those different types of things. So definitely, it was a bit of a bummer. Just thinking about it and kind of like, oh, do I change the name of the show? Like thinking through, are people going to think that this show is affiliated with a company or that like this is Hashgraph's show or something like that? It's weird to think about Hashgraph being a company. So anyways, I think that, you know, some examples are be like, what if Google called themselves search engine, or if OpenAI called themselves artificial intelligence? You know, there are certain words that are kind of like neutral territory in the tech space that, you know, I think we should have. I think that 2020, you know, Vision's 2020 looking back. I think that we should think about what that means for the word Hashgraph as something to describe the technology, as something to associate yourself with this network that doesn't corner you into the word HBAR or with a specific organization. So, you know, disclaimer, I'm not affiliated with Hashgraph, the company. This is a show about Hashgraph, the technology, Hashgraph Enthusiasts. I hope that doesn't become a thing that I have to do. I don't want to change the name of the show, but it's not like a 0% chance that I'm going to change the name, because I got to be honest. Like, I don't want the name of the show to be misconstrued or anything like that, you know? So a challenge for me to kind of think about and deal with that I wasn't expecting, but it is what it is. So curious to hear other people's thoughts on that, but that's just kind of my thoughts on it. Also too, good morning. Good morning. Good to see you, Stein, tuning in. Let me see here. I'd say do not change it unless it actually becomes confusing. I agree. I think that's where my head is at right now. I think that initially when I kind of started thinking about it and chatting with people about it, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to change the name of the show. But I think that now kind of thinking about it, I think I'm okay. I think I'm going to be okay. I just have to see if it becomes confusing in any way. I think that, you know, if I get anybody or get somebody kind of being like, hey, you know, do you work at Hashgraph or something? I'm going to be like, oh, I'm going to have to change the name of the show. And that's like so much work. That would just be like the last thing that I want to have to do. It would just be a nightmare. Take a lot of my time away. So it is what it is. Agreed. We're staying the course. Raising the question. So appreciate everyone tuning in. I know it's sometimes it's some folks tuning in for the first time live. The show's live every Wednesday, 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on Wednesdays right now. So every week tune in. And it's available after, like on YouTube and Spotify and Apple Podcasts. There's an audio version. There's clips that get published. So check it out.